And we are good to go.
All right, I'll call to order this meeting of the City of Climate Action Plan Committee for Monday, September 11, 2023 to order. President Hoy.
Stapleton.
Slater. All right. And absent is Gonzalez, and our alternate is not available. So I'd also like to just go around the room and have other people do introductions as well.
Sure. I'm Jeff Johnson. I'm a natural resources planner in Public Works.
I'm Bobby Kidd. I am the Strategic Initiatives Administrator from Chariots.
Welcome.
I am Ted Stonecliffe. I'm a transit planner at Chariots.
Sorry, what was your first name?
Ted.
Ted, sorry.
And I'm Robert Chandler, Assistant Director of Public Works.
He's Silly City Manager.
Okay, Heather Dimke, Public Works.
All right. Welcome, everybody. Did we receive anybody for public comment?
I didn't receive any public comment.
Okay. And nobody's here to speak. So we have our minutes from 3-6 and 5-8. Any comments or changes?
I move approval of the minutes.
Awesome. For
Sorry, that took a hot second.
for 3-6 and 5-8.
Yes, both of them.
Second. Any
Aye.
second?
Hi.
Perfect. All right. We will turn it over to our guest, Bobby Kidd from Chariots.
Great, thank you so much. Situated really quickly. Open.
Looks like someone's in the way here.
Oh, thank you.
Also from Chariots.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Lots of moving parts.
There sure is. Four.
All right. Thank you so much. I'm Bobby Kidd, as I previously mentioned. I'm the Strategic Initiatives Administrator for Chariots. I've been with Chariots almost 2 years. And it's okay, I'll just,
Oh, yes.
there we go. Thank you. So I've been with Chariots almost 2 years, and two of my main initiatives that I've been working on so far is I'm the project manager for the organizational strategic plan. And then my second main initiative that I've been working on is I'm the champion of sustainability across the organization. It's a lot of moving parts. We have, operations with our maintenance of facilities, our fleet, and then we have a lot of behind the scenes admin work. And so I'm just kind of coordinating those efforts. And today I'm here to speak to a brief update about the various initiatives or projects that Chariots is currently working on or has accomplished around sustainability, and then what we're looking to forward, so a future climate action plan and things of those sorts. So thank you so much for having me today. Please let me know if you have any questions throughout and after. So I'm going to briefly go through our 4 services. And the first one is our Chariots Local, and that is the service within the Salem-Keizer urban growth boundary. We have 21 local fixed routes with 64 buses, and it operates 7 days a week. All of the buses have an extensive list of accessibility features. All are ADA accessible, and currently, we just implemented the electronic fare system for payment in August. So that's really exciting. I rode the bus here, and it was one of the first times I was able to scan with my app. It used to be, since I was an employee, I could just use my badge, but now everybody's using the app internally or the card. So exciting stuff. And with that comes fare capping. So individuals or riders who can build each day, pay if they would like to for a day pass, and then at a certain point, it caps for the month instead of having to continue paying for the whole month. It caps at the 30-day rate. So that's exciting. And then something else I'd like to highlight is a youth ride free program, and that is a partnership between the city of Salem, thank you, and then the city of Keizer, and the school district and Chariots. So that has proven to be very successful, and the ridership for youth has increased tremendously. And so that's just a feature I wanted to highlight about the local service. So The second service I'd like to highlight is the Chariots Regional. So that's the public transportation that provides service to our 17 rural areas surrounding Salem and Kaiser. And then our Chariots Lift service is a paratransit transportation service for the Salem Kaiser area. Chariots Lift is an origin to destination shared ride public transportation service. And it's for individuals who are unable to use a regular Chariots local bus service due to functional limitations. And the application process helps identify those individuals, and they are scheduled over the phone through a call center. And then finally, we have the Chariot Shop and Ride. This has 2 arms, which, first of all, the Shop and Ride is for seniors 60 and over and people with disabilities. And all Chariot Shop and Ride buses are ADA accessible as well. And unlike Chariots Lift, no applications are required for this service. So the 2 arms is the Dial-A-Ride service, and that has resumed post-COVID. And that picks you up at home and takes you to any destination in the Salem Kaiser urban growth boundary. Medical appointments have priority. And again, that's for 60 or over and people with disabilities. And then the second arm is the Ride Shopper Shuttle service, which has not resumed post-COVID, but that's a grocery store system.
Is that
Pick you
going to
up.
be coming back anytime soon?
That is something that our executive team is weighing the pros and cons. At this time, we're sticking with the Dial-A-Ride only, but we'll be reviewing the Shop and Ride soon. I don't have a timeline for when we might be implementing that again, but all I can say is that it's going to the executive team for consideration soon, next couple of months.
Okay.
Thank you, Ted. And this is Ted. He introduced himself earlier, but thank you. And then, so those are the 4 services: local, regional, paratransit, or Lyft, and then our Dial-A-Ride. So another service I'd like to highlight is the commuter options program. So the main purpose behind the commuter options program is to reduce traffic congestion, pollution, dependence on gas and oil, energy consumption, and stress. And so why reduce? Better air quality, to save money, community livability, and conserve resources. So how does the program achieve this? They provide information and connecting and help around carpooling, van pooling, bicycling, walking. There's several challenges throughout the year to promote this. And then also there's group best pass programs where businesses can buy a sum of passes at a discounted rate for their employees. So the commuter options program is that's where this is housed in. But it's a great program. So on to talking about sustainability. Once we kind of have the baseline, the bread and butter, what Chariots does. So some sustainability highlights. I'd like to start with the battery electric bus project. And there are 10 battery electric buses that have been delivered and are on site. Chariots will be the second transit agency in the nation to have both depot, which is plug-in charging for the battery electric buses, as well as inductive charging on the same bus. They're going to be compatible with both. And so we have 10 on site, and we have also grant funding for 10 more that will be procured. Depot chargers will be installed at the Del Webb maintenance facility. And then inductive charging construction has started at Kaiser Transit Center. And this month, so just a couple weeks ago or a week or so ago. And if you haven't been out to Kaiser Transit Center, I'd suggest taking a look. It is a construction site, so it might not be the most beautiful site in the world, but to me it is. I think it's gorgeous because that means battery electric buses are coming. And then all of the stakeholders around the infrastructure meet bi-weekly. So it's been a process to get the infrastructure going, and now it's going, and we're hoping to get the battery electric buses on route shortly or as soon as possible. And you might be wondering, well, where is the route going to be that's going to be electrified? It's Route 11. It's our largest route. It serves both Salem and Kaiser, and there's diverse demographics. So The first 10 buses are slated to electrify Route 11, which serves Lancaster, beginning at the jail, traveling through business districts, residential communities, Chemeketa Community College, and all the way to our Kaiser Transit Center. And then because the Route 11 is our busiest service, both Salem and Kaiser, so we thought it was going to be a great route to electrify. And again, this is where we're starting. So this is the first 10 buses, but with the other buses coming, there's going to be more routes electrified. But this is where we're starting. It's a good spread and very densely populated. So the benefits of the electrification with the zero tailpipe emission is going to be wonderful in a condensed area like this. So the battery electric bus benefits, these are just a few. I don't have all day to kind of talk about all of them, but just some highlights is zero tailpipe emissions. It's cleaner air. The battery electric buses don't have tailpipes, so there's nothing coming out of them because there is not one. And it's also very quiet. You can hear a soft purr if you're on the bus or directly by it. But in general, it's a quiet vehicle, and it's also reduced maintenance time. So although it's costly for parts, it doesn't require as much maintenance. And then once you get the parts, it's easier to fix. That's what the findings are saying. And let's see here.
How
yes.
often do you have to charge?
Daily.
Just once a day?
Well, some will be on route charging. So depending upon the route, it will be when it stops at Kaiser Transit Center, the inductive. So I'll be pulling over a charging infrastructure and it'll just be charging automatically once it's hovering over it. So that's called on route. And then of course at nighttime, it's going to be charged at our Del Webb facility by being plugged in. Yeah.
Fancy.
Yeah, very fancy, yes. An electric bus after the warranty period is expected to have the same overall cost per mile as most other buses. So it's more expensive to procure them, but the long range benefit is far greater. Any questions that I could possibly answer about the battery electric bus program before I move on to a few other initiatives?
I have just one quick question. It looks like now we can use electric cars in emergencies as house backup.
Mhm.
Has there been any discussion on any sort of resiliency aspect for the bus battery, which I have to imagine are pretty large?
Yes, I'm unsure. Do you know about that, Ted or Chris?
I don't know all the details, but it's similar to an electric vehicle car. Yeah, the battery banks are much larger than the cars, obviously. And
Right.
so it's like having many Tesla poles available. And so, yeah, the energy is able to be
It's like in an emergency, for example, you could actually deploy a bus to serve as a backup system.
I believe it's possible. Chris, did you have any other
Yeah,
information?
I was gonna say it might be possible, but it's something that we have not explored at this time.
Sure. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Any other questions? Okay,
Do you have a target for deployment?
spring.
Yes, our target is January.
Okay.
You should see them on the road soon.
You looked a little nervous when you said January.
So January is
Stop construction.
So January is the date that they'll be fully deployed. You'll start seeing them out on the road for training because there's a fairly extensive training process that we have to go through with the operators and also just some real life testing as far as battery use and those types of things on the route. So in the coming months, you'll see them out on the Route 11 simulating riding or in service, and then January it'll be full deployment.
Thank you. I guess. Is it public knowledge, like how big are the batteries? Teslas have like 100 kilowatt, hour batteries. What are these for the buses?
I wish I knew that off the top of my head.
I don't have that information either, but we could get back to you.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Totally in support of this. I agree with everything.
Okay. So I'd like to talk about the renewable natural gas program that Chariot has as well. So RNG is the capturing of, or RNG or renewable natural gas, is the capturing of methane from decomposing organic sources, for instance, landfills, dairy farms, refining and pumping it into the natural gas pipeline. So Chariots uses renewable natural gas since 2018, December of 2018. And the program works by having these producers through a broker partner and certified fleets as an off user of the RNG produced. And Chariots is an off user for this. And so from an environmental impact or aspect, methane is a greenhouse gas, and the methane is being captured. So it's not going out into the atmosphere, refined and then placed into the natural gas pipeline, going directly to Chariot. So that is a benefit of capturing that methane and going into our buses.
So are you getting specific, like from a specific source, or are you really just kind of paying for this program that augments natural gas, like with renewable natural gas?
So we're, I just talked to Greg Thompson, our maintenance manager, about this the other day. It's not at the point where we can say we're pulling from this dairy farm right now. He's hoping to get there someday, but right now it's just from the options on a list,
Okay.
and then we're getting the benefits.
Essentially, you're subsidizing the program and then,
Right.
okay.
Yes,
It's like renewable energy credits.
Yeah, that's all right, yeah.
Gotcha.
Okay.
Mhm. Exactly. We recently, within the last few years, replaced our bus wash. So Chariots prides ourselves in having really clean vehicles for our riders in our community. In the rainy winter months, every bus is washed every day, and during the summer months, it's usually every other day. So clean and well-maintained vehicles have shown that increases perceived safety. And so it is important for us to keep the fleet clean for our riders in our community. So this creates a large demand on water, since we have, 64 local buses, plus we have our regional and our paratransit as well. So the bus wash, the old bus wash was very inefficient and mostly ineffective. So the bus wash was replaced with one that has much smaller footprint, does a much better job, and especially scrubbing the back and under the normal conditions requiring less maintenance. So with this new bus wash, we were able to install a water reclamation system that catches, cleans, and reuses the water. We added a reverse osmosis final rinse to reduce glass water spots, negating the need for a blower to dry at the end on the windshield. And through this bus wash, the new one reduces our soap usage by nearly 70% and our water consumption for the bus wash by 80%. So this
Fantastic.
is a really exciting feature, and I like to talk about it a lot. So, but yeah, the bus wash replacement has been super beneficial.
Is that Del Webb also?
It's out of Dova,
Okay.
yes. So we also have an R99 program. So we have 64 heavy duty buses, 30 of those are diesel and 34 are renewable natural gas. So for the diesel buses, we're using R99. We were doing B20, which is a blend of diesel, 80%, and then the 20% is soybean oil and residual cooking oil, algae, animal fat, and canola, which is better than just regular diesel. B20 was a huge improvement, but then R99 came to be as an option. And it's made much like bio, but it's not a blend. It is the fuel. And let's see here. So we tested B20 by wet fueling a small isolated part of our fleet to determine if any unforeseen issues would arise. It worked well. We used B20. We then began investigating the use of either a mixture of biofuel and renewable diesel. R99 was experiencing some positive results in the industry. So when R99 started to become available, Chariots was using it every chance we could. There were some supply issues because Portland took the majority of the R99, but then when there was more readily available, then downstream we were able to consume after that. So our sole source of fuel for our diesel fleet is R99 now.
Is R99 renewable diesel? Is
Yes,
that the same way for-
exactly.
okay. Our whole fleet, all of our diesel vehicles run on that as well.
Oh, awesome.
In the city.
Great.
That's cool.
Before was it B20?
I just know it's renewable diesel.
Okay.
That's why I was asking. I've never heard the different letters. I'm not sure which.
And
ours
there's a
is,
lot of
honestly.
letters. And it
I just know
changes,
it's- Fleet says it's renewable.
Right. Okay. The other program is our re-refined oil program. So re-refined oil is a process where used oil, like motor oil, is processed back to a pure base stock, and then the additives are added back in. So the oil never wears out, but the additives do. So instead of getting rid of our oil, we actually go through the re-refine process, takes out those additives. So boils down to a virgin oil, and then we re-add fresh additives. So because of this, I have some statistics. Chariots has used 62,856 quarts or 15,000 or so gallons of re-refined oil. It takes 24 barrels of crude oil to make 12 gallons of motor oil. So Chariots has saved almost 3,000 barrels of crude from being produced just from this one re-refined oil program.
How do I get
Yeah.
on that?
Yeah. So our LED lighting project. So when our Kaiser Transit Center was being built in 2013 or was built, LED lighting was the original option. So since that time, Chariots has conducted 3 major initiatives to replace the lighting on the transit mall at the downtown transit center, the exterior of our administrative and maintenance facilities, and within all bus working areas within the maintenance shop. So each time one of these phases was completed, reliability of the lighting was increased. So Greg Thompson, again, manager of maintenance, said that the repair costs and the time before LED took, I mean, you could go down to the downtown transit center and there's always bulbs out. And since LED, it's not the case. And so it's been a huge safety improvement, as well as cost for maintenance and upkeep. And then while the project costs varied, the rebates from the Energy Trust of Oregon typically saw a return on our investment in 14 to 24 months. Okay. I would like to share this picture. The before is on the top left, and then this is out at Del Webb. So this is our maintenance and facilities location. We have some administrative offices, and as you can see behind our shop is where we store the buses in the evening time. And so top left is before and then the after. And this is one example. So we did it not only at Del Webb, but KTC, Downtown Transit Center. And there's a lot of positives from it, including environmental. Okay, so my last slide is about kind of the behind the scenes. So those were really great examples of what Chariots is doing in regards to sustainability. Public facing, and what our riders can experience on our buses and washing and whatnot. And then we also have an established sustainability committee, our green team. I'm the chair of the sustainability committee, and it was established I'd say about 10 or so years ago. And since COVID, I kind of brought it back to life. And our committee, our 3 priorities is outreach, education, both internal and outside, and as well as recommendations and research about various ways we can improve as an agency. And then also the Sustainability Committee just initiated a greenhouse gas emissions inventory over calendar year 2022. We just got the results about a month or so ago, and they were presented to our board at the August work session. And then from the baseline information, it's going to feed into our climate action plan. So we're going through writing of the scope right now and the procurement process in order to bring a consultant on to help us develop the climate action plan that is complementary to our local and regional partners, including City of Salem, and then also the county and the state level, Oregon ODOT, and then so the climate action plan is a huge initiative for the district. It's one of our 13 activities for fiscal year 24, which we're currently in right now, and to kind of get started. We're also Marion County Earthwise certified since 2013, and then we're signatory for APTA sustainability commitment. APTA is the American Public Transportation Association. We committed to aligning our initiatives with APTA through a commitment program. And then finally, just a highlight that, you know, in everything we do in regards to development of transit centers, both KTC and future projects, we're always keeping sustainability at the forefront of our mind, really in almost, you know, every decision we're making as a district. And so it's something I would like to point out as well. And that concludes my portion of the presentation, but I'd love to answer any questions if I can.
Questions? Go for it.
So I couldn't help but notice the picture of where all the buses are.
Yes.
Do you have any plans eventually of putting sort of like a solar canopy or anything over the parking area?
No explicit plans, of course, with charging infrastructure, everything's kind of been brought up. I don't know if that's in the immediate future, but
I do know there'll be some regulations coming online about sheltering parking lots over a half acre. It's coming from the state.
Okay,
So I don't, probably not a mandate to go and do it if it's already built, but
Mhm.
something to be aware of.
thank you.
So what's going on with ridership?
He has a perfect person in here.
Sustainability is really cool, but if nobody's getting on the bus,
Uh,
then it's.
Yeah. Ridership
it's a
is
return.
on the increase, month over month. Ever since 2020, we've been seeing double-digit increases, which is exciting. A lot of that has to do with our youth ridership program that we're partners with the city on. We're really excited about our electronic fare program and how that's going to be creating more opportunities for folks. It's a more equitable program with the fare capping system, where you basically earn a month pass as you pay, as you go, and it takes about 28, 29 rides, so about 14 or 15 days to earn that month pass. But for those consistent riders, a lot of them it would be hard to pay out the $45 in one payment, but $1.60 or $3.20 for a day pass each day is a lot easier for folks, especially families. We've just been tracking up and up, so things are looking good.
I have a question about the electronic fare system. So I downloaded the app and loaded some money onto it. And I'm just curious, so I haven't used it yet, but I did download the app and have money. So when I do, I'm ready to go.
Okay.
Do you have that money, or is that like sitting with this app company? Like if I haven't actually used I was just curious.
Yeah. So I believe it's in a Chariot's account.
Okay.
You wouldn't
good.
be able to go to Eugene and
No.
use that.
No. I just meant like, is some app company, do they have it, or does Chariots actually get the money once I load it?
Chris, do you know the answer to that? I don't
sorry for
know
saying
the
this.
technicality.
I was gonna say, we'll have to check into that. I am not 100% sure on that. We can get back to you.
Good question.
I was just curious. I'm just wondering also, how has it impacted ridership? Have you noticed, have you received many complaints from people not being able to access the platform, or how's that going?
It's really going well. Chris, do you have any information on that? I think.
Yeah, so I know in the first month we had over 1,000 people sign up for the program. And that's between the card and the app. We haven't abandoned any of our previous methods. So all of the previous fare media that was available is still in place. It takes time to move that stuff out, and getting the adoption. So we didn't want to just change day one and force everybody. So all of the previous options are still there, and slowly over time we'll move those out as we get more adoption to the e-fare program.
So you can still pay cash, is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
You will always be able to pay cash. There's equity issues with removing cash as an option. It's just, there will always be or as far as I see into the future, a cash option.
Thanks. I wanted to ask a little bit more about the business. I don't know what the program's name is, but where businesses can purchase
Group bus
passes,
pass.
group bus passes. I know that's been a challenge. I think personally, I think because of the requirement that had been in place, where if you want to do it, you have to purchase one for every employee. So for instance, the city of Salem has 1,350 employees, but not all of them would be, riding the bus wouldn't be practical, but there could be a nice core number of people where it would be. And I'm wondering, have you thought about, or have you implemented anything to relax those requirements? So maybe we could purchase a smaller number than that.
That's a great point. Our Chief Planning and Development Officer, Shofi Azum, is on, and he may be able to answer that. We just had a discussion last week about this very thing. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Yep. Good morning. I'm not sure if you can see me. It's really weird.
We can see you.
All right. Can you hear me though? I mean,
Yeah.
All right. Sorry about that. I've been a little late. Yes, I can expand on that. So, and this is my second month. So I started on July 31st. And since then, we have started expanding and exploring different mobility options, including the group pass program. So Kiki has been working on this, and she kind of like informed me that there has been some additional demand for flexibility in the program. And we are, as we speak, working on those criteria, how we can reach out to more people and to fit their needs, and especially the employer's need. And to answer your question, yes, we are working on it, and then we will be in touch with you if that's the case, and then see how we can better serve the need of the community and the employer as well. Yeah, so the short answer is we'll get back to you and see how we can better serve.
Thank you. I really, this one's really important. I mean, of all the questions I've asked that you might get back to me on, this is the only one that really matters. So, and this is the only one that really could impact climate in our, climate action initiatives in our city, and actually have a meaningful impact on greenhouse gas reduction. So, and not just with the city of Salem, I've heard it from others. I know there are other large employers who might be interested as well, or maybe even not so large employers. So I think that as much flexibility as you can build into that, I think it will increase your ridership. And I think, that's good. When your ridership goes up, that's, we all benefit.
Yeah.
So.
Yep, right on.
I have a few different questions. I've tried to group them in topics for you. So I want to start out first with an easy question, and that is, how are you educating the public on the youth free ridership program that you're offering?
There's been a lot of communication with the school district. There's a video that has been developed that will be released to all students and through, I think, the app that Salem Kaiser School District uses here in the next couple of weeks. I have not been on that initiative. I don't know if anybody else has more to add.
Yes, I can chime in. Sorry. Yes, so that video is going to be, it's going through final review right now as we speak, sometime mid-September. If that, I can say that sometime this week or next week, we would be able to go live. And then that we're working with the Salem School District as well, and working on a roll-up plan. So how we can better outreach to those communities and working with other stakeholders. So yeah, that work is in progress, and sometime this week or by next week, hopefully we'll be go live.
Great, thank you.
Mhm.
As you know, we have our transportation system plan update happening soon. I would love to hear more about your rapid transit goals for the future. Any kind of ideas on how we can work with bus lanes and bike lanes, and how those two things should function really well together in the space that we have. We're pretty well built out, so we need to use the curb to curb that we have. So how do we use that and benefit both of those modes of transportation? And I'd also love an update on any kind of South Salem Transit Center.
All right. I'll take a stab at those questions first, and then maybe Chris and Shofi can chime in. I guess I'll start with the South Salem Transit Center. We're working with a consultant, Pivot Architecture, as we speak, and the board is going to be, I believe, looking at the conceptual drawings that have been developed at their work session on the 14th this week. So we're really in motion to get to a point where we can get to a point where we're choosing the actual plot. There's two choices right now. One on the northeast corner of Wilton Commercial and one on the southeast. So they need to make a decision of
So same intersection, just different.
just different quadrants.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. Because there's been some questions about like, we don't know where, what they're going to choose. Because we have a project going on out there that's included in our bond. So we want to make sure to coordinate with you so that we know the future of this area and the impacts for riders and people who are trying to get to your location.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
Chris, do
along
you
those lines, I'll just chime in real quick. So one of the NEPA process is underway, and that process has to be complete before we can actually enter negotiations for purchasing the property. So that process is underway, but it's not complete. So we can't actually enter into negotiations with the property owners until that is complete. So that is underway at this time, and I am blanking on the date, but it's in the near future that NEPA process should be completed, and then the negotiation for actually purchasing the property will start.
And then for your questions about rapid transit and
Yeah.
the long-term goals, as you probably know, we adopted a long-range transit plan back in December, and in that document, we do have explorations of different modes and options of looking at queue jump lanes, bus only lanes, how we integrate with the bike infrastructure is key as well. Shofi has come from Kansas City area transit, and they have much experience there with bus rapid transit. Shofi, do you want to chime in on your experience? And
Yeah, absolutely. So, in addition to what Ted has just mentioned, so bike rapid transit BRT, yeah, I have experience deploying 3 bike rapid transit in BRT. So yeah, I'm not going there, but the importance and the need for BRT in Salem, and we will definitely take a look at that and then explore potential options. So, and then you have also mentioned the bike share, and if we can have a shared bike use in city of Salem boundaries, or maybe potentially including Kaiser area as well. This is one of my top priorities for in near time soon. So I'll be in touch with city of Salem in sometime this month to figure out next move and what serves the best the community needs. And so this is certainly one of my top priorities, to figure out a potential need for the bike share and what is it, and in terms of the funding model, and then deployment, infrastructure, policy, and also the capital. So yep, so we are working on this bike share program and other micromobility options as we speak. So yep, more to come.
Thank you. And then I have one last area. Is that okay, everybody? Yeah, sure.
Is there a minimum residential density for bus rapid transit? And I understand that generally you have to have a fairly concentrated group of people make it successful, like a couple hundred people I mean, it's not a small number.
yeah, yeah, I don't have that number off the top of my head, but you're right. The more density that you have, the better. But if you just look at our ridership today, we're approaching those upper levels of efficiency on our core network routes, such as South Commercial, River Road, the Lancaster corridor. So as the population is growing, as land use densifies, yeah, we could see that need coming along, next 10, 15 years. So
You mentioned earlier about ridership being up. Can you give us an idea how many people ride the bus on a typical day in Salem Kaiser area?
it's around 13,000. Is that right, Chris?
Thanks.
I think we're a little bit below that. I think we're at, 12 to,
Oh.
yeah. We're getting close. We're almost back to pre-COVID levels. We're like approaching that or equal to it, and continuing to see growth. So just since you asked me that, I'll say we are working on a transit signal priority project, which is green light extensions, which will be going, that we're working to deploy on the Lancaster Drive corridor, which will be coming. We're in, some of the technology is already installed in the signals, and we've been working and collaborating with city staff and the vendor for that to go live in the coming months.
Thank you.
Can I just follow up on
Yeah.
that follow-up question? In terms of the ridership per day being close to the pre-pandemic levels of 12,000 or more per day, is that like the total amount for a 7-day week? I mean, we now have Saturday and Sunday service, or is it averaged out over?
That's an average weekday.
Okay.
Saturday would be about 60% of that, and Sunday maybe 30–40%. And that has to do with the level of service that we're able to provide. Saturday, we don't offer the frequency, we don't offer the number of hours that the buses are available. And same with Sunday, we're unfortunately not able to offer that
Yeah,
level
totally.
yet.
So would it be more of an apples to apples to say for Monday through Friday, the standard, it's pretty close to pre-pandemic, and we have these additional rides happening on weekends that just weren't happening before?
Absolutely.
And then now, since I'm talking,
I actually have a follow-up on that. You're gonna change topics?
yeah,
Yeah,
it's
you
still
can-
about ridership. but-
Okay, go ahead.
Well, it's both the topic change in. I mean, it's about the youth ridership. Our budget is very constrained at the city of Salem. I would like to lock this in perpetuity. I think it's very valuable for our community. But how far is it funded through right now? Like the cooperation between the city of Salem, Kaiser, and the
I
school.
believe it's 2 years. Is that right, Chris?
No, I'll speak to that. So the city's commitment was for the first year of the pilot project. The Salem Kaiser schools have, for the second year, provided funds. We've also, in our statewide transportation improvement fund, we have included funds through 26 to continue the program. Through 26, the program is funded at this point.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask about the hours. You referenced them, and I know that you had plans to extend hours, but I know that then because of operator limitations and budget and all sorts of things, you weren't able to quite get where you wanted. Are you there yet?
We're back. We're offering service. Our last buses leave downtown at 11 p.m. now.
Okay, so you are out to and that's only Monday through Friday.
Right.
How late do you go on Sundays?
Sundays is 8 p.m. Or is it 7 p.m., Chris?
Sundays are 8 to 8.
8 to 8.
a.m. to 8 p.m. So that is definitely the weekend service is definitely an area. On Sunday, it's really just the core network that's operating.
And what about Saturday?
Saturday, we operate until 9 p.m. 8 a.m. or
6
Sorry,
a.m. to
7.
9 p.m.
6,
6 a.m. to 9 p.m. Thank you, Sheriff.
And is that core network only also, or is that other?
There's other routes included in
There's
that,
other
and the frequency is higher. Some of the core network is half-hour service on most of it. On Sundays, everything is hourly service other than the Route 11 and the Route 7, just because of the length of that route. It's a half-hour route, so it runs every half hour. It takes a half hour to complete the route.
Do you see that the weekend service increasing at all anytime, or what are the impediments to it increasing?
It's really
Funds.
funding. Yeah.
Funding, okay.
We
Funding
would
is, yeah.
to turn more routes on and increase frequencies, especially on Sunday, the Route 21 and South Commercial, we're almost hitting an average of 30 riders per hour. So it means that the buses are quite crowded right now.
Would that be, if you had funding, would that be your next priority, or would it be an additional route somewhere else? What, I mean, like, where's the next thing?
I'll speak to that. So we're getting ready to complete a comprehensive operational analysis that will evaluate current service and then also kind of look at into the future as more funds become available, where those are deployed. And that's really a community question. That's not, I have my personal thoughts on what I think, but it's really the community that will help drive the next steps into the future. If that's additional routes or if that's really building out the network for weekends and even weekdays. There's areas that we've heard in some of our work that we've done that earlier mornings in order to get to some of those manufacturing and different jobs are important. So it's a question for the community, and we will be asking that in this year, probably towards the end of FY 24.
Thank you.
So now I have.
Okay.
This is really for Robert. Does the city and Chariots, do we talk in terms of missing sidewalk infrastructure and connecting people? Oh, okay. And connecting people to bus stops?
We talk a lot with Chariots about bus stops and how to make sure the bus stops have the support they need for landings, ADA accessibility, everything else. Missing sidewalks is not directly linked to the bus stops, to my knowledge. Primarily, that's related to safe routes to school as our higher priority of getting into the bus stops, but it's still there.
So we don't analyze. I'll be quiet. You
No,
go. No, you're the counselor.
Okay, here's my question. From a policy perspective, how can we help Chariots be even more successful and help our residents get to their bus stops and use this service more often? Both of these points were on my list here. I know that we have some hurdles, I'll use the word hurdles, to getting parking removed next to existing bus stops. And, you know, there's a lot of going to neighborhood associations, and there's a lot of steps to this process. I would like to see that more streamlined so that we really elevate transit and make it easier to and more efficient, which then will increase ridership. I would like to see changes to that policy. Also included in our climate action plan is repairing sidewalks and infill for sidewalks within a quarter mile of the core network. That's in this plan. That is not the policy that we have for the city yet. I would love to adopt that. Are those types of policy changes, I would assume that you would be in agreement with those things, but can you speak to the importance of those things or what that would mean to Chariots if they were changed?
Absolutely.
Is that good?
Sure.
Okay.
Yes, it's very important to have accessible paths to our bus stops. I would argue that it's as important as the Safe Routes to School program. We've tried to get grants for what we call Safe Routes to Transit. And, you know, because there may be a cul-de-sac where somebody has to walk all the way around in order to get to the stop. But if there was just an easement to get through to the next street, it would be a lot shorter of a path, that sort of thing. Such as West Salem, the West Salem area, there are just a lot of disconnected streets that make it difficult for people to get to the bus stops. So on a policy level, yeah, really working to prioritize within, certainly, first of all, within a quarter mile of our core network, but also really throughout the whole system. We are working with city staff. As you probably know, they have, the city has a tremendous wealth of data with the Cyclomedia project to inventory all of the sidewalks, and we want to work with Council of Governments to map that data so that we have a better knowledge of where these sidewalk gaps exist and possibly.
Right, that was where that's what I was wondering. If we're getting to the point where we can say you can overlay your ridership and potential ridership with a sidewalk gap map and say, okay,
Yes.
here's what we can prioritize
Right.
to pick up ridership through that infrastructure improvement. And that ties in with the bond, doesn't it?
Well, yeah.
We have a wonderful software that is a nationwide ridership estimation tool, and with that, we're able to predict ridership levels. But yeah, it can be as sophisticated as showing where those accessible paths are, but it's more on a as the crow flies within a quarter mile at this point. But it's getting to the point where if we had the data, we could, you know, pinpoint more closely where we can make those improvements. So,
Do you have any estimate on how many of your stops are not ADA accessible? Like what percentage?
Chris, do
We
you?
should, in this year, we are doing an inventory of all of our stops, and we hope to have be able to provide that data more clearly. At this point, we don't have a full inventory of the ADA accessible stops.
Well, I just have to be consistent, and now for 7 years that I've been on the city council, I've been advocating for my bus stop to become ADA accessible, because the only way you can get to the bus in my neighborhood is either run your wheelchair through the bark chips or ride in the street. So I will once again say that at Walker and Future, that bus stop is
It's on our
horrible
list.
and has been.
Is
And
that
so-
on our improvement list, Chris?
Which stop was that? I didn't quite hear.
It's at Walker and Future.
So on the Route 5,
Yeah, I
Route
think
5.
yeah, okay.
between,
It's just bark chips. Or you go in the street, which is fine for me, but I don't need a
Right.
wheelchair.
So there was the talk about making, I want to say that the city has helped with the parking removal piece on new stops or in new developments. The existing stops are definitely more complicated because people have been there for a long time, even if the stop has been there. So the process that the city has in place, although I don't like it really, it makes sense and it's fair to the community in some to make sure that we're doing it. But it's great that in the new developments, even if we as we've with the code amendments, we're able to request stops even in areas that we don't have service yet, but we're looking into the future, and stops have been built throughout the community so that when we do start serving that area, we don't have to say, oh, we want to remove your parking. So yeah, just sharing that it's not perfect, but it is much better than it was before, because we can actually require development to include bus stops as they're building out the infrastructure.
Thank you. If there aren't any more questions, I think we probably need to move on in the agenda because we're getting down on time.
Thank you so much.
Thank you
for
so
having
much.
us.
This was a great conversation. Thanks for being here. It's always good to have communication with Jerry. So, yeah. All right, so Jeffrey, we are on to goal 5 riparian inventory.
Yeah, well, Jeff is getting set up. Let me give a quick introduction to this, because this is part of, so protection, planning and natural resources, planning and management is part of my division's areas of responsibility, one of them. And as Jeff will tell you, we're beginning work on this goal 5, statewide planning goal specific to the riparian areas. And this is part of our outreach to all the various boards, commissions, committees on what we're doing with this. The nexus between this and climate action is preserving, protecting, and to some degree enhancing the natural environment. In this case, urban creeks, urban streams, urban wetlands is one of the aspects of climate action, reducing impacts, greenhouse gases and carbon absorption. And so among the ultimate endpoints of this much longer process is decisions by city council on what measures we want to take, if any, to protect these riparian corridors, primarily course of development, setbacks and things like that. How do I do, Jeff?
Great,
Right.
thank you. I don't have anything else to say. Thank you. I'm Jeff Johnson, Natural Resources Planner. Been with the city since January 3rd. And Goal 5 has kind of become my baby. A lot of the stuff you'll see here was developed by Jennifer Mongolo, our Senior Natural Resources Planner. So I'm piggybacking on a lot of work that she did. So Goal 5, it came about as one of 19 statewide planning goals. During the 70s, there was a lot of population growth. And there was a lot of concerns about, the economy being, with a lot of agriculture and forest that are these big land-based industries that are really important in the state, as well as sprawl, concerns about the environment and natural resources. And so that they passed this statewide planning goals and it directed local governments to do inventories and then create policies to protect these areas, as well as revise that policy from time to time. And so recently, City Council directed city staff to begin working on the riparian corridor process.
How did we manage to go 50 years without actually doing this work?
So my understanding is that the state came out with this, and then there was a comprehensive plan amendment. And during the time that the comprehensive plan amendment was going through and all this was going to be put in, the state stopped doing anything with these goals. They stopped following up, they stopped checking on updates. And so basically by the time it got through, there was not really anything happening anymore, or any incentives or requirements to.
I have a
Jump in
different version of that, but I'll let it go for now.
So that's my understanding.
Okay.
All right. So goal 5 is specific to natural resources, scenic resources, historic resources. And we are just focusing on the riparian corridor portion of this now. There's also wetlands and wildlife habitat under goal 5 that are the responsibility of the city, but this kind of covers as much of those areas as it can without actually covering, right? So it establishes a 2-phase process, which is this local inventory and assessment, and then there's the policy changes that come up with it. So this is a diagram of what a riparian corridor looks like, and includes the riparian areas, which is basically the transition from the aquatic or water resource area up to the terrestrial resource, and then all the water area, including wetlands, streams, and as well as the other side of the riparian area. So these areas are really important because they're a sponge, they're a filter, they provide shade and a lot of things. And so as far as nutrients and pollutants, really helps with shading of streams to keep those corridors intact. It filters out a lot of pollutants, nutrients, and other things, both coming into the system from the sides as well as it moves through the system. These riparian areas, you can see the banks, you can imagine when that's full of water, that soil is absorbing a lot of that water. And so when the water drops, the soil releases that back down into the stream. So it also helps keep flows a higher level during low flows. It also reduces those peak flows because it allows the water to spread out when it comes in. They're also, they're really beautiful. It's really nice to be able to access them, live by them. As far as climate, these areas are under pressure from increased intensity of events, increased, like it's really dry, or then it's really, really wet. And so there's space in between. So there's temperature threats to the system, as well as just being able to handle the changes that are coming with climate change moving forward. We also do know that property values tend to be higher around riparian corridors. So we're planning for this because we really want to have something that's locally effective. It really needs to work for Salem. It needs to work for all the parties involved. And so that's kind of the guiding goal that we have, is to make sure it works. We want to reduce uncertainty, which helps everybody, including the city, developers, and so on. We want to make sure that those stream values for the residents are saved, including the aesthetics, and everything else associated with that. We want to make sure that they continue to function from now until, whenever the city's completely built out. We want to make sure those are protected. And then, of course, we want to satisfy the goal 5 requirements. Excuse me. Okay, so it's set up in 2 phases. There's that inventory phase, which I mentioned a couple times. The inventory phase provides a couple of different guidelines that you can use. You don't have to use one or the other. You can mix and match. You just have to justify why you use them. So the safe harbor approach basically gives a specific setback only from fish-bearing streams. So that's one approach. The standard approach is more site inventory related and based on specific conditions on the ground. So we're in this phase 1 right now, and when we're done, we're going to hand off a city waterways map to community development, and then they will work on all the policy and those areas related to that. So this is kind of an example. This is kind of an example of what the safe harbor looks like. So it requires a 75-foot setback from the top of bank on major rivers. So only the Willamette in town has the 75-foot buffer. All other streams that are fish bearing will be a 50-foot buffer from the top of stream bank on both banks. And it is prescribed to only be required for fish bearing streams if that's the approach we use.
Can I ask a question about that?
Sure.
So is it historically fish-bearing streams or current?
So it's current based on a map that's provided by Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. And even if their map is wrong, that's the requirements. Use their map.
Love that.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And then do they, I'm guessing that now we're paying attention to this, we're gonna continue to pay attention to this. And does that change if a stream goes back to its historic and has fish again? Would that one then be included as well?
These are good, really good questions. And I think
I'm
a
sorry.
couple slides from now,
Okay,
it'll
okay.
all wrap back
Stop.
together. No, but those are really good questions. Yes.
How many of the fish bearing streams do they think we have in the city?
Our preliminary mapping shows 78.4 miles of fish bearing streams and 32 miles of non-fish bearing streams.
Okay.
That's of about 90 total.
It's 110.4 miles. Yeah.
Do we have access to like a map of which ones are which?
I have one here in my slide deck. That will come up soon. Yes, yes. I had a hard time finding where to put the map because it could fit anywhere.
Jeff and I spent a lot of time on this thing, and it's like, okay, they're gonna ask this question, I have this slide ready to go, and they're gonna ask this slide, so we're prepared.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
The standard inventory differs in that it's reach by reach. It's based on specific conditions on the ground. Basically, it's primarily determined by the height, the average height of the dominant tree species in the riparian corridor. So it requires a lot of input. It requires a lot of justification. It is preferred by conservationists because it does protect a larger area. In talks with the city's attorneys, they prefer the safe harbor, one size fits all, because it reduces litigation. It's a lot easier to implement and have that kind of understanding for everybody going ahead, what they're going to be dealing with. Yes,
Can the city do a mix and match?
we could. Yes,
In general, we're gonna do a safe harbor, but these areas we really are interested in being more implemented.
yes, we can do that if we decide to. Our current approach does not include that. So I'm calling it Safe Harbor Plus. And basically, it's applying those setbacks to the non-fish bearing streams as well as the fish bearing streams. And so that gives us all 110 miles have that 50-foot setback. Well, actually, aside from the Willamette River, we will have that 50-foot setback. Let's see.
Are you going to talk about the process for deciding which method we're going to use?
So we have just kind of had a lot of internal discussions about the methods, and this is kind of the baseline method. So we can always add more after this if we desire. So we figured this was a good place to start. We've also seen that municipalities almost never go with standard approach. Sometimes they'll look into it, they'll do the whole inventory, and then they decide, nope, too much work. So like Corvallis and some other cities have just said, no, we're going to go with the safe harbor approach, even after spending a lot of time and money mapping. So that's why we started here. And I think I forgot to mention here that the setbacks for safe harbor also include wetlands. Adjacent wetlands, like you see in A, which are right on the bank, that makes the buffer go out around those wetlands. And then like B, it's within that buffer. And so it gets included and gets buffered around it as well. And then C, standalone wetland, it would not be included in this because it's outside that corridor.
We see a fair amount of wetlands being developed through the land use process. There are a lot of pieces of wetlands that are just kind of in the middle of a field, and those are getting developed.
Yeah. So we're looking at hiring a consultant to help us with the mapping. Basically, they're going to do the wetland part of that corridor. They're going to look at the wetlands. We're working with Pacific Habitat Services right now. They kind of help develop this method for the state, across the state. And so we're working with them. We want them to go back, look through all the state records of wetland delineations that are within those corridors. And then they're going to go and do some field work and checking to see if they're considered significant wetlands. And that's what is actually included. So we can make significant whatever we want it to be, as long as we justify it. But generally it's those that are just within that corridor and then or connected to a wetland that's in that corridor. So if there's a wetland in the corridor and then a wetland adjacent to it, that would go all the way around both wetlands.
So all other just standalone wetlands are not gonna be protected or considered as part of this project?
Not in this part. So goal 5 also has a wetland component and and a wildlife habitat component.
Okay,
We've just been directed to start here with riparian corridors.
thank you. That
Thank
helps
you.
me understand the process better. I'm hoping we get to those areas eventually.
I think we will when we direct it.
Yeah, I'm okay.
This is kind of starting the groundwork for more work to come.
Yes,
I
definitely.
hope you know what you're doing.
Well, and ideally, this inventory, the basic inventory, we might identify areas or reaches that says this requires more than just 50 feet of river. And that is what we'll do. We'll look at more of the standard protection rather than start everything standard, which is very data intensive and a lot of money, which by experience, by other jurisdictions may not be a good investment resources.
It also creates a lot more litigation potentially.
So this is paid for out of the utility fund, is that right? Not the general fund?
Correct. Good question. No, good question. Fair enough. Yeah.
So would it be possible to integrate the wildlife inventory with the riparian, just for the riparian area? So that we could kind of get 2 bites at the apple for. Or does it have to be completely?
It's not-
Project.
We're not specifically pulling out the habitat, but by protecting that corridor, we're protecting probably the most important habitats in the city. We're also protecting a lot of important wetlands. And here's the map. This is very preliminary, but you can see the purple, those are the fish bearing streams. And then there's some green, like around Minto Island, those are wetlands, but then all the other green lines are non-fish bearing headwaters. And they're really important ecologically. You can't just go to where the fish start and say, okay, we're going to start cleaning it up here. Everything above that is really important as far as nutrient inputs, pollutants, water temperature, and groundwater recharge. And so you can see it's a lot of areas that wouldn't be protected, say, if we just did fish bearing. And with 110 miles, it can be a lot to do a standard inventory of the entire area as well.
Can I ask a question that you might answer later?
Nope, I've only got one more slide, so
Okay.
I think we're close.
So I live super close to Mill Creek, and this area and sections of it are really built out. And, we have some concrete walls that are going straight down to the water with houses built right up to it. How does this kind of work interact with already built out development?
Great question. And in our meeting with community development last week, they talked about basically you can do something in the same footprint within that area. If it's existing, there's no new requirements unless you expand it
Right.
or add an addition or.
So they're all
something like that.
grandfathered in, is what you're saying?
They are,
Yeah.
until they decide they want to make the building bigger or do something else.
There are some federal programs, at least there was a federal program, and certainly a number of states have pursued this, which is using federal dollars and FEMA dollars, particularly around floods, to buy out properties that are intruding in the riparian areas for restoration purposes. So I think last time I talked to Robert about this, he reminded me that most of the city is in a floodplain, and that would be an expensive project.
I would say most of the cities in the floodplain, but the areas that are, certainly.
Yeah.
So can I ask another?
No,
okay,
please.
So I'm just imagining the creek right by my house where
Sure.
we have cement wall on one side, and then on the other side, there's kind of a tiered step up to some setback houses. Now, I'm assuming that the people who own that land have a certain understanding of where the line on their property is and what they're allowed to do within that space. I'm assuming that with this kind of work, those might change. And how are we interacting with folks who are property owners that maybe what they can do with their land in the future that's changing? How are we communicating that with them and inviting them into this process?
So we're currently, most of our focused outreach is to neighborhood associations, watershed councils, here, the Equity Roundtable. I believe we've already presented at Morningside Neighborhood Association. We're a planning commission. We have a few more planned, but the specific time when the public's going to really have input is when we have a draft map.
Okay.
And then we'll have like a outward facing website where they can look at the map, they can provide comments, they can say, this isn't a stream, it's a parking lot, or you missed this stream. And then we'll take that data, check it, and revise the map at that point.
Okay.
So this is our draft timeline. We've been working through all the Q3 stuff And then once we get the consultant on board, we're gonna have them work on the mapping. And then once that map, their deliverable is a waterways of Salem map. So it defines all the waterways. They won't be putting the buffer on it because the buffer's from the stream bank. And so at the time of development, like when they have to do a wetland inventory or something else, they'll also have to define top of bank for their site as it's developed. So otherwise streams move and things happen.
I was wondering what qualifies as a stream. I noticed there's one near my house that's green, but it's really a stream about 2-3 months a year when it rains. But otherwise, it's just dry.
Yeah, so those ephemeral and intermittent streams are also included because they are really important to everything downstream.
But how do you map those? Like
We're currently working with a map data set that was provided by, I believe, the stormwater group that shows all the waterways. Yeah, there are some of those little sections on the map that are piped that we haven't pulled all that out yet. It seems very preliminary.
Okay.
Robert, I believe you had something.
Yeah, and Councilor, the answer to your question about looking involved, people who may have issues with the regulations of land use, that comes later. The good news is Jeff and Jennifer are scientists and not regulators. But the work and the details, the data and information we hand over to community development, urban development, as they start assessing and dealing with that outreach, and here are the options for protecting and the trade-offs involved with that between protecting our riparian areas and the issues with land use, rightful use of your land, takings, all of that stuff.
Okay.
Yes, and I was going to say that too, and I forgot it. So thank you. Yeah. So yeah, we're going to let that really hard stuff fall on community development. We're just going to get the map done and get it correct at this point.
I'm gonna jump in just real quick and point out that we're at 11:11 and it's we've got a couple items, especially one that I hope we have at least 10 minutes.
Okay.
To go.
Any other questions?
Thank you. This was a really
Yes.
great
Super.
introduction. Thank you.
Yeah. So please
Good to
reach
see you
out if you
again.
have any
You
questions.
guys did a great job in Morningside.
Thank you.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah.
No, you were fine.
Yes. Carrie,
Thank you.
to color.
Yeah.
It was our questions, not their presentation. All right, so we want to go just to the work plan updates, or do you want to?
We want to just jump into it's up to folks. I know we've got at least 10 minutes to discuss the heat pumps.
Do you want to go directly to that?
Is that okay?
Yeah.
Doesn't matter.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't have a hard lock, so I have a character minute.
It's the room that other stuff.
You do.
I do.
Oh, we're doing heat pumps first?
Yes.
Oh, I missed that whole full. All right, I can talk fast. I typically talk fast, so. All right, so most of this is Heather's work. I get the pleasure, I guess, of reading her work. So, moving to heat pumps, I don't know if the city has a concrete goal in terms of heat pumps, but expanding the use of heat pumps in the city is part of the climate action plan. So talk a little bit about that. And you're gonna run?
I'll run.
Okay, so key points on the heat pumps. The most important thing, okay, one of the most important things to understand is that they provide both heat and cooling. So one mechanism replaces two mechanisms. It's important to understand that when we get into terms of cost, because heat pumps do cost more than either a furnace or an air conditioner. But as I point out a little later, it's about the same cost to install a heat pump as to install both an air conditioner and a furnace together. So that's important. As I said, they're 3 to 5 times more efficient than traditional heating technologies, such as a gas furnace, and certainly, oil. I don't even know if people have oil here, but some people do. And they're slightly more efficient than existing air conditioners. They do a slightly better job dehumidifying and some other aspects, but there's not the same amount of kind of cost savings on air conditioning that there is in winter heating. And of course, here increasingly air conditioning is the real dominant pressure on the grid. So there are a fair amount of incentives out now on heat pumps. It's an important thing. The federal government is offering 30% off, 30% tax rebate for the next decade. So they've really locked this in. That does buy down the cost of a heat pump considerably. It's getting close to, if you're just going to replace your furnace, for example, and not your air conditioner, that 30% rebate gets you pretty close to being on par with a heat pump. So that's an important thing to remember. heat pump works by magic. This is the most important thing to understand. Apparently, it somehow, through the magic of compression, chemistry, and physics, takes heat from one place and moves it to another place. So in the winter, it captures ambient air temperature. Again, through magic, brings it into your house and blows it around your house. And in summer, it does the opposite. It takes hot air and moves it outside. Maybe Robert has some ideas on how this actually works.
You're doing fine.
Okay.
Give it time you got, you're doing great.
The magic of compression and decompression, I understand, using coolants. But again, they're 3 to 5 times more efficient than traditional heating methods.
As a quick just analogy, any of you use those spray things to get the food bits out of your keypad?
Oh,
keyboard?
yeah.
You notice how it gets cold? Yeah. That's the compressed air inside that thing expanding out. And that's kind of how heat pump works. Just so think heat pumps next time you blow all that stuff out of your keyboard.
I watch This Old House. They talk about these old stuff.
Heat pumps are a big deal.
They are.
So there are at least 4 different types of heat pumps out in the market today. The one that is really, the 2 that are make sense here are the ducted air source heat pumps. So this is taking advantage of your existing ducting. There's a unit outside, there's a unit inside, and it moves, blows hot and cold air through the duct system. For people who don't have ducts, there is the ductless air source heat pump, sometimes called a mini split. So this is what would be going into an older home or also apartments. So these are now being used quite often in apartments. Most of the apartments going in Salem today are all electric. So something to be aware of. In some cases, our desire to get electrification in the residential, multifamily residential, that's largely happening today. And in part because of the ductless air source heat pumps. They are more expensive though. So depending on the size of your house, a ductless air pump can cool about a 500 square foot space. So if you have a 2,000 square foot house, you're really looking at 4 mini splits. So it does add up to be a little bit more than if you're just using one central unit, the ducted air heat pump. So that's something to be aware of. And that's going to be really an important conversation when we look at retrofitting our older housing stock, right? But again, currently there's a federal incentive. So this is national and state policy. That's important to understand. The federal government, through the Inflation Reduction Act, has put in this huge 3% tax credit. People can take up to $2,000 a year until the tax credit has been used up. So if the credit that you will get is more than $2,000, you just take it the next year. You don't lose it. That's important to understand. And this is significant enough that the Biden administration invoked, what is it called? The Defense Production Act. So they're actually working to expand the availability of heat pumps through federally government directed manufacturing. And then Oregon has just passed a bill that sets a goal of 500,000 new heat pumps in the next decade, 7 years. And they're setting up their own program for rebates and installation. So that's kind of a very good opportunity. I know Councilor Tom Anderson, Representative Anderson now,
There you go.
was involved in this quite a bit. So I think there's some real interest in trying to figure out how to make this work in Salem. And of course, California as well has set their own goal around heat pumps. So the installation cost, as I said, it's very similar now to air conditioning and furnaces together. The average price there, if I put my glasses on, tells me that it's $4,000 to $12,000. 4,000, I think, is maybe too low now. It's probably more in the 6 or 7. When I looked it up, Portland, they said the average right now is 7,000 to 13,000. So that's something to keep in mind. The ductless heat pump is somewhere around $10,000 to $17,000. Again, based on the number of heads or units that you need, with each head supplying about 500 square feet. So next slide, please.
Jumped it, sorry.
That's a no. Keep me moving. And in terms of the maintenance and longevity, heat pumps, because they do both summer and winter work, they don't last quite as long. On average, is 15 years. I've heard 12 to 15. I use the more persuasive number. Whereas furnaces and air conditioning tend to last 20 years. The significant part of longevity really is the annual maintenance. A lot of people skip that, and you're just going to have a bad result, whatever product you use without the annual maintenance. So it's something to keep in mind as we educate people about heat pumps and HVAC systems in general. Next, can you go to the next slide? This, as I said, there's incentives with the Inflation Reduction Act. The state is setting up a series of programs. I don't think they're fully online yet, except the rental program, which is online and looks like, from what I understand, that those going to be expanding considerably. And then,
Keep going?
Yep.
Okay,
so pros, as we said, they're much more efficient. They do well in our climate. They are, they use renewable, assuming you have renewable electricity. They're a clean source, and they are a savings over time. So it's about, what was the payback? Kind of like 5 to 6 years, I
It
think.
was under 10, I thought, yeah.
It's definitely under 10. So
Yeah.
it's under the life of the system,
Mhm.
which is the important thing. So people do wind up with savings over time, compared to traditional sources. The bottom line says electricity costs also tend to be more stable. I think that's an old point. I don't think that's, or maybe it's stably going up, right? So we'll drop that one as a pro. And then, so do we have cons next?
do.
So the real con, I think, is, retrofitting people's houses that don't have ducts. I think that is the real challenge. I've read that HVAC installers in the Pacific Northwest, maybe not as sophisticated or as well versed in this. That has not been my experience. And I know a fair amount of people in the city who have recently had replaced their furnace and air conditioner. And when I last did that, I was referred to a heat pump. Like, oh, you want to go to a heat pump? So I don't know if that's the case in Salem, that our installers here are not familiar with heat pumps. I suspect this is more a regional comment or more of a rural comment. And again, there's not a lot of difference between a heat pump and a high efficiency air conditioner in terms of billing in today's market. As Chris is looking at his watch, I'll go on to the next page. The real bad news, which is in another slide, is that California tried to mandate the use of heat pumps and all electrical housing, and that was enjoined by the Ninth Circuit. So our ability here in Salem to mandate all electrical new construction or to mandate heat pumps does not exist at this point. So we have no authority to mandate the use of heat pumps or all electrical construction in Salem. So that's just kind of out. A number of cities have tried to do that, and just with that court case, they're not able to pursue that. So we're left to incentives, public education and incentives to get that out. And that's,
Here's the ruin.
yeah.
Well done with the time. Do you have another
No,
final comment? So that was a
No.
great overview.
no,
So it sounds like we don't have the ability as council or the city to make this a mandatory thing, even for like new construction.
correct.
Okay, so
That's
we're
the current state of the law, unless it gets appealed to the Supreme Court.
we're currently just with incentives and education and promotion. We've talked a little bit about this. I think it was brought up by testimony during the zoning subcommittee that we met first summer or second summer I was on council, that what is helpful is potentially mandating an audit at the time of sale of any property, both commercial and residential, so that people who have that property
An energy audit.
an energy audit, that's what I meant to say, can make an informed decision on what actually helps their house more. Is it new windows? Is it heat pump? Is it getting rid of, something else, a gas stove top, whatever. So that would be something that I would like us to look at. I believe there is some, opposition in terms of there's some upfront costs it adds to the fees at the time of sale. Usually, I think it was around $350. But if there's something that we could do to give people that knowledge and just set the expectation, that has been shown to make a huge difference in people's usage of energy of all types. And then they're making a decision not based on like what they think might be beneficial, like solar panels versus this or that, but what actually changes, what moves us in the right direction for a very, very ambitious but necessary, climate action goals. And I don't see an alternative with this presentation, if we can't mandate things like the heat pump, which I think could really move the needle, then I don't know what else we could do.
I have no idea what incentives are available to the state and how we price out incentives. not a consultation, I've never had it, so I.
Could we get more information about what resources we do have to consider, promoting or incentivizing? Sure. Yeah. Absolutely.
Community development block grant can be used to retrofit, low to moderate income.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how we are utilizing those now, or if we're not, how we can move in that direction.
Are those that's for residential as well? Yeah, it is,
It is only for residents.
only residential.
Yeah, I'm not in favor of banning natural gas, at this time for new construction. But Eugene.
No, we can't.
Oh, and so
We
that
cannot.
Eugene, I want to clarify. So it's not just that we can't mandate natural gas, but Eugene tried and it failed at the courts. Okay, so it's
They tried it in California, it failed at the courts, and then
Okay.
Eugene, it got put on the ballot, and they pulled it, and then they realized because of
it's
the California
also-
case that they can't do it.
so they passed something, but then pulled it. Okay, so it's not. It's
And
not
they're
an option.
rewriting it. It's not an option.
Fair. And I mean, so anytime this comes up, it's
It's not an available option to us because of the most liberal, just, circuit court in the country said, no, you can't do it.
so asked and answered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Anything else on this one? Okay,
All right, so we
So
have
that's
time
it.
for a very quick update. I included, thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Very helpful. Included with the agenda packet, the CAP work plan and associated updates. I wasn't planning to walk through all that unless there were any questions on those 15 activities. But I think Councilor Stapleton reached out last week and asked for just a quick snapshot of where we're at. So that's what I'm showing here is a quick slide. I hope it's somewhat helpful. This is overall, get the settings right. So 100, and I had to go back through and I verified 183 strategies in all in the climate action plan. I tried to group my best to group these by those that we have completed, those that have some kind of movement, either they're underway, they would be considered ongoing, or staff have started to review, and those that we just haven't even looked at yet. So 12 in all, which is a pretty small number that we can check off the box and say we've completed. 83 of those are in movement, and yet 88 that we haven't yet had a chance to look at. And it's possible I didn't have time to reach out to staff that some of these numbers would change a bit. There's a lot that I don't know about some of these activities. But that's where we're at. And the other thing I wanted to add, that 12 number is small, but I wanted to remind that most of the activities in the climate action plan really are kind of developing long-term ongoing programs. So there's not a whole lot in there that I think we could easily check off. I think most of them are going to be ongoing for years. So that's kind of the overall look. And then here's just another look by the different category areas that we have. You can see most of our initial efforts have been in the energy and transportation. There's a lot already underway by staff across the city in the natural resources realm. And quite a few of the community, but nothing completed just yet in that category. So kind of a high level overview. Is there any questions on that?
Thanks for pulling this together for me.
Sure.
And a lot of things that are blue will stay blue because a lot of the actions are coordinating, collaborating with other agencies, other organizations. That will just never stop.
doesn't mean that we're not making progress. It just means that it's not.
It might never be ongoing.
It might never be.
That's right.
Yeah.
Okay, the green is good, but the blue is also good.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
The work has been started and
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thanks, everybody. We'll meet again November 6th.
Thank you.
We're done early.
36 seconds.
Put it in.
Who's counting?
Good day, everyone. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks,
Bye.
guys.
The camera off.